Well, so first of all, ladies and gentlemen, this is the Dr. Sophie Rothschild Show, and we're pleased to have Gina Tis Louise. She is a strong opponent of the opposition to repeal the death tax. Gina, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Rabbi.
So, talk to us about this campaign to repeal the death tax and why is its important to all the people of California.
Okay, well, I think the problem we have is that when we speak to 9 out of 10 people, most people are still unaware that the death tax passed. And it's unfortunate because the time that they find out is when they are about to lose their home after they've lost a loved one, a parent or a grandparent. Recently, we've started to see more people putting it on social media. But the unfortunate thing is that they're not pointing them to our website, which is forcalifornians.com, FOR, Californians with an S.com. Our prior sponsor for the last 2 campaigns, as this is the 3rd campaign to fix Prop 19, was the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association. And they've decided not to repeal the death tax until November 2028. So we as volunteers decided to proceed to run Fix Prop 19 to save our children's future by Repeal the Death Tax 3rd campaign and hedge our bets with a petition called Reclaim Voters' Rights. And I can go into all of that momentarily.
Sure.
But getting back to what you were saying, for those of you who aren't aware of what 2020 Proposition 19 did, was it took away property rights that have been in existence since 1986. Families in California, businesses in California have relied upon Propositions 58 and 193, which we can kind of say is Prop 13 for the children, to invest in properties in California, to stay in California. And those rights were removed fraudulently and through misrepresentation through Proposition 19. So kids may be inheriting a home, their first home, because the average age of home ownership is now 49 years of age. And most people, when do they inherit? When they're seniors. That being said, they may be inheriting their first home, and because most estates are house rich, cash poor, they don't have the cash to pay the tax reassessment and are being forced to sell their homes. The average probate time is more than 18 months. So some people don't even know if they can even live in the home within 1 year, which is the requirement in order to get the $1 million+ exemption. So the date of death is what starts the tax ticking. And so within 18 months, you'll get a huge bill. Some of our volunteers have indicated they've gotten bills of $40,000, $50,000. So they're up against a time clock to either try to find money to keep the property or to sell.
So many people are also saying to me about something to the Texan is that this death tax could be unconstitutional because the Constitution guarantees us the right to private property and the right to be secure in our life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Is there any plan to team up with any other organization like the Heritage Foundation or any other organization to attack this from a constitutional angle?
So we have reached out to the Pacific Legal Foundation, the IJ. We've reached out to a lot of organizations, including the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association, regarding the unconstitutionality. As I mentioned, it was determined to be fraudulent because there was a Mercury article in which Jim Brulte, who was the chairperson of the Republicans, he was stated as saying that if you moved into the home, there would be no property tax increase. And we know that not to be true because one of our volunteers, who was also quoted in the same article, Sherry Duffy, has lost her home because the property tax was unaffordable. Getting back to the 14th Amendment unconstitutional provision, it was in violation of due process. Charles Munger Jr. filed in 2016 Proposition 54, which passed because Californians wanted transparency and accountability for our elected officials. It basically said that any gut and amend, which we know Prop 19 was a gut and amend, has to be in writing and voted for after 72 hours. It was in writing, modified that same day, and voted for same day. So it was in violation of Proposition 54. There are also rules for the Senate and the Assembly to actually anything that was a gut and amend, they have to return it to the committee and then have a public hearing. We never had a public hearing on this. So that's another violation, right? And then there's also the germaneness rules where if you gut and amend something, it has to be germane. How does funding the Legislative Analyst Office have anything to do with funding wildfire, which eventually ended up taxing people out of their homes? So the 14th Amendment says that no state can enact a law that would take away our rights through undue process. And with those three things, obviously, it's a constitutional violation.
Yes, that's a very good point. Because talk to us about how did this whole dead tax came to be? Who was behind it? What organization have been pushing it? Because I know that there are certain individuals in California who are, I won't call them communists, but they're very much against the concept of private property to begin with. And could you talk to us about that?
Yeah, so unfortunately, the realtors have wanted what they call portability for decades. So that's the California Association of Realtors and the National Association of Realtors. And I am a real estate broker. But I believe that the whole business of real estate is about generational wealth building. And obviously, the California Association of Realtors and National Association of Realtors, they spent $45 million on the 2020 campaign to make sure that 2020 proposition passed. Prior to that, they had spent cumulatively, if you include the 45 million, $58 million. So they've been wanting portability for a long time. Now, what's interesting is they have their legislation that they're going to put on the ballot, and the legislators asked them to set aside their legislation so that they could put on theirs. And that's the other thing about this gut and amend is they were late to putting it on the ballot because everything had to be in by June 25th. The legislators were late. They wrote themselves an exception through SB 300 to get it on the ballot. So the realtors were for Prop 19 because of portability. They're saying they did not intend the consequence of the property tax reassessment. The legislators wanted the property tax reassessment because if you think about it, every time someone sells, they increase their property tax revenues. And we've had that happen that every year the counties have seen increases. So, you know what? Did they need to do this? No. The sales themselves have been driving up the prices. Our opposition not only included the realtor community, but it also included the fire individuals, because if people remember how it was being marketed, it was marketed to protect seniors, disabled, wildfire victims. And the money by formula was supposed to go to wildfire. Well, we know from the Department of Finance that no monies have gone to wildfire, and yet people are losing their homes, which is an unfortunate reality.
Yeah, there's an old saying, when they give government money, they don't spend it wisely, they just waste it.
And, you know, I'm a member of the taxpayers associations because I was looking for people to help me fight this. And the more I find out, your statement is actually true, because a lot of things don't go to the specific causes that they sell it on. So for instance, when I went to go talk to Kevin Mullen, who's the author, and he's like, you know why this was put on there, right? And I said, why, Kevin? Why? Tell me. And he said, for wildfire. And so we have to be careful, because what we're being sold may not be the thing that they're putting the money towards.
Yeah, that's so true. Recently, there was a report, I saw it on YouTube, where the state spent about 20 something $billion on homeless programs. Unfortunately, even every year, yet years later, nothing has been solved. We see these non-profit organizations paying that get the state grants, paying their CEO, their leader, like $500,000, $300,000 a year. So it's basically like a gravy train of scam and fraud, and it, that $20 billion could build millions of homes and could solve the problem. But government doesn't want it. They just want to keep the problem going to to um, to just keep the stances in place. And so my question is that as we continue the campaign, do you tend to like focus on how the government is wasting the money in the first place? Also bring it up as a talking point.
Well, it's actually interesting because you mentioned homelessness, and the Apartment Association of Greater Los Angeles County has nicknamed Proposition 2020 the homelessness machine. And if you think about it, these individuals, because right now in San Mateo County, a $2 million median home needs an income of $524,000 to qualify. Less than 15% of Californians can afford to buy, which means that through 2020 Proposition 19, they're going to force the rest of the people out. And like I said, for these people, it's often their first time that they own. So we're going to force people out. And yeah, some people say, oh, you're lucky. You have $1 million, $2 million. Sell it. Do you know how long 1 million lasts nowadays? It lasts, if you're lucky, 16.8 years. And we all know we're living longer. So since we're living longer, they said that those retiring at age 65, more than half of them will outlive their assets. So once they sell, they outlive their assets, and guess where they go? On public reliance, homelessness. Sherry, our volunteer that lost her home, her brother is going to be one of the RV homeless. She doesn't know where she's going to go. We talk about homelessness and affordable housing, and yet we're taking affordable housing away from those individuals that have it. So it's a big highlight of our conversation.
Yes, indeed. And thank you. Well, thank you for the good work, the amazing work you're doing and bringing this to our attention. Now, as the campaign continues, what's the objective? You want to get it on the ballot, or you want to get it? What's the objective going forward?
The objective of the Fix Prop 19 to save our children's future by repeal the third death tax campaign is to get 875,000 signatures to get it on the ballot and win it. Because if we don't win it, California in 20 years will be a huge disaster. We are hedging our bets through a second initiative, and that's called Reclaim Voters' Rights. And that only needs 547,000 signatures. We were told during the repeal the death tax second campaign that we had 560,000 signatures. So with the 547,000, it's possible that we could get that on the ballot if we miss Save Our Children's Future, which I'm hoping we don't, because we have a lot of renewed interest this campaign to get this on the ballot. And this campaign, we are doing as keeping portability, making it retroactive for those people who haven't sold but are struggling to pay the increased property taxes, and then restoring Propositions 58 and 193 protections for families going forward. I know there's a lot of families that, transfer the property, but that only saves one generation. And what I'm telling people is, and from your history, a lot of the very wealthy in the past, like the Vanderbilts, etc., they lose wealth in 4 generations and under.
Yeah.
So we shouldn't make it more difficult to lose generational wealth. We shouldn't make it more easy to lose generational wealth. We should make it more difficult so that we have less people reliant on government.
That's a very, very good point, because and in fact, there's also another national movement that's pushing for the idea of getting rid of property tax altogether, because they're saying that people should not be forced to pay money on something that they own. It's basically an insult. There's been a number of people, both Democrats and Republicans, who want to get rid of the idea of property tax altogether and just go to something more reasonable and more responsible.
It's interesting. If you look at our country, it was founded upon no taxation without representation. And income tax and property tax actually only came in early in the 1900s. It wasn't since the founding of our country, and it was more so volunteer, which we would like to see that happen again, right? Where you have the very wealthy willing to volunteer and donate to charity. There's the Billionaires Club, where they're donating 50% of their wealth. But here we have the billionaires tax. And unfortunately, with government, we're seeing that they're not necessarily, like you said, good stewards of our money. And there's been a lot of unfortunate fraud, which, we would hope that those people that are our electeds would do the right things for the right people and not for special interests.
Um, that's a very good point. Could you also talk to us about what other organizations are helping in this main in your campaign?
So here's the interesting thing: is we are trying to get coalitions to support us. Kern County Taxpayers Association has agreed to support us. The Family Business Association of California has agreed to help us. Monterey County Taxpayers Association, the Fresno Association has agreed to help us. In fact, Chris Mathis has written several articles, and he's also been on some news networks getting the word out. So even though we haven't, obtained Howard Jarvis's support yet, which I would like to get, there is a movement. And like you said, a lot of people would like to get rid of property tax in general. Some people would like to get rid of income tax in general. And we're going to see on the 2026 ballot, unfortunately, a ton of taxes, whether it be sales taxes, transit taxes, parcel taxes. And you know what? We're already struggling with insurance rates going up, with cost of living for food going up. So we don't need to be taxed more. If anything, we need responsible government to try to cut expenses and help the people that are struggling.
Yeah, that's a very good. Yeah, it's interesting that most of the politicians in government now have six-figure salaries. There's the case of Governor Newsom spending tens of billions of dollars to expand a government building in Sacramento, and yet it's still going on after all these years, and it's not completed yet. So we can see right there the money has been the waste, the fraud, and all this nonsense. And in fact, with the news proposal for quote unquote wealth tax and all this nonsense and all these parcel tax, people are literally beginning to flee California.
Yes.
The middle class and the people that create jobs are fleeing. So the state, in many ways, is beginning to implode. Could you talk to us about that?
And that's the problem, is there's a lot of division, and that's why we are nonpartisan, multi-partisan. I don't care what your party is, as long as we are working towards the same goal, which is to keep people housed in truly affordable housing, and keep businesses running. Prop 19 was a travesty because Liam Dillon wrote an article in the Los Angeles Times, and it was about the Lebowski loophole, which was about the Jeff Bridges family and how they had a rental property generating, I think, $15,000 a month while they were paying $5,000 a year in property taxes. What people failed to realize is that, you know what, that $15,000 a month in income is probably being taxed at 50% every month. But they use that to divide the people, to get people riled up and angry. And guess what? Who got hurt? The working middle class got hurt. And it's the same thing with this billionaire tax. Unfortunately, is a lot of people have the belief that the billionaires don't pay anything at all, which is very untrue. If you look at the Tax Foundation, they say that the billionaires pay 40% of federal and state taxes. And so when these individuals leave California, it's going to fall back on the working middle class to make up that lost revenue. And even worse is it wasn't even government that wrote this legislation. It was the SEIU, which is a union, that drafted this. It's people wanting to take other people's assets. And that's wrong. They say it's one time, but how do we know it's one time, and how can we stop it? At any point in time, someone can say, Rabbi, I want your car, and I'm going to write this legislation to take it because I can. And that's just wrong. And that's why I'm hoping people wake up and stop this division. I mean, it was trying to what they call eat the rich, because that's what it was in the olden times, right? When they wanted to topple the very wealthy, it was eat the rich. And that mentality has come back, but unfortunately it's hurting the working middle class.
It's interesting. That's very interesting you brought it up, because it's the billionaires and the millionaires who create jobs. You know,
Definitely.
all these companies, all these employers, they have to have money to employ people. So if you start, you know, disenfranchised, try to take away their money and make it hard for them to start a business, guess what? They're gonna leave, and people are gonna have no work. So once again, this is all nonsense that's been pushed by certain individuals who just have things for private property. And who are your opposition? Do you have any organizations that are opposing this measure?
Well, we're anticipating that the fire will oppose it, even though they've not received any money in the last 4 years. We're anticipating the realtors associations because they have to support their investment of $45 million. But I'm hoping that the firefighters will wake up, because we have some volunteers that are firefighters, because they want their families who aren't firefighters to be able to stay in California if they pass away. We have realtors who are opposed. And I was told, and what I've learned is it's top down. They have to listen to the state board as to how they work. Same thing with a lot of these other organizations. A lot of the union members, they can't afford to stay in California. In fact, one thing that came out recently was a less than $4 increase in the fast food industry has now decimated the fast food industry. You're seeing In-N-Out leaving, you're seeing all these businesses leaving because paying someone $20 an hour, they can't make a profit anymore. It just doesn't make sense. McDonald's in San Francisco Stonestown closed down. McDonald's, who thought McDonald's would close down, right? But it decimated the industry. And here's the fact. Every business in California will be impacted, because when your employee who's relying on multi-generational family home gets a $10,000 property tax reassessment, they will need a $4.81 per hour pay increase.
Yeah.
So if it decimated the fast food industry, guess what that $4.81 will do to the rest of California?
Perfect. It's absolutely destroyed. And that's why I keep telling people socialism never works because it destroys people's incentive, it destroys communities, and it just creates all this waste. So that being said, let's take a quick break and we'll be back momentarily.
Thank you.